What is up, guys? Welcome back to Gabe Miller Music. I apologize for the poor video and audio quality. This was the only opportunity I had to record a video, so I'm just in a parking lot, and there are birds all over the place. Over the past couple weeks, I received a couple of questions from viewers wanting to know how I go about recording my electronic drum kit, specifically using Midi. And so I'm going to go into that. There are 3 different ways to record an electronic drum kit that I know of, and I'm going to go into all 3 of those and then talk about, and the third one is the one that I recommend you actually do. The first way is simply to use the audio output from the drum module. So if you look on the side of the module, there are 2 outputs, so you can do stereo. So you just run 2 cables out of those outputs and into your audio interface and just record the audio coming directly out of the electronic drum kit. And this is great if you need to do some recording very quickly, and it's also great for helping with method 3, which I'll get into in a second. And if you have a drum kit that you've built in the module that you really like the sound of and you don't need to modify it at all, really, I would just use that method. It's probably the easiest and quickest method to go. The only problem is that, you know, like I mentioned, the sound in that the module makes is not necessarily the best, and so you will compromise on quality just a little bit depending on what you're trying to do. So that's the first method. Second method is to use the USB out on the module. So there's a USB output, so you just plug that in directly into your computer, and that's one of the ways you trigger Midi. Now, the problem with this is that with most computers, you will run into what is known as latency, which, for those of you unfamiliar with the term, latency is basically a delay between when you hit the drum and when the computer generates a sound. So imagining my hand is a snare drum, for instance. Here's what it would be like without latency, and here's what it would be like with latency. And if you've ever tried to play with that, which I have, it's basically impossible. And it's extremely frustrating, and it's very hard to get rid of that latency, especially if your computer is not quite up to snuff with specifications and whatnot. So I really don't recommend you use this method. The third method, which is the one that I use the most when recording for clients and whatnot, in addition to the USB out on the audio interface, there's also a jack to plug in a flash drive. And this is what I use when recording. So here's my whole process. So I'll use the outputs, I'll use the audio outputs on the module, plug those into my audio interface, so I'm recording the sound of the drums into the computer. And then I'll have my headphones plugged into the audio interface so I can hear the click track that I'm playing along with, and if I have any backing tracks I'm playing along with, I'll hear those too. So I'll hear the click track and I'll hear the backing music, and I'll be playing along with that with the audio plugged in. So on the computer, the drums and all the stuff I'm playing along with will line up perfectly. Then, simultaneously, I will have a USB drive in my module recording the MIDI, so that once I'm done with the recording session, I will take the MIDI track off the USB drive and bring it into my DAW, and then line that MIDI up with the audio. And then just jettison the audio. I don't need it anymore. Unless I end up liking it, then I'll just use it. But usually I'll just jettison the audio, and then I can tweak the drum sound to my heart's content. So the basic reason that you need to do both is so that you can line up the MIDI track after the fact, and you need something to reference. And so once I've gone and lined it up, I go ahead and, you know, go into Steven's Slate Drums or Logic's built-in drum kit designer and do a bunch of stuff with that. And that's about it. If you do decide to go with the flash drive method, be sure you read the manual so you can make sure that you're recording the MIDI into the flash drive properly, because I had a lot of frustration when I did it wrong and had to go back and re-record stuff because it wasn't recording or I didn't do it right, and you got to make sure you format your flash drive and whatnot. So be sure that you read the manual on that. I hope you guys found this helpful. If you have any questions, leave them in the description below. And be sure to subscribe for more Audio Geek videos and for more electronic music. And I will see you guys next week. Peace out.